Hello, Christopher Holloway here, and this is the Failed Films Podcast. Each week, my co-host, Lauren West, and I explore the messy intersection of failure, art, and life. This week on the show, we welcome Janesta, filmmaker, dancer, poet, and Failed Films royalty since our very first season in 2016. From making DIY installations with found materials to creating mesmerizing films like True Colors and Blacklight, Janesta's artistic journey embodies the spirit of failed films. Janesta reveals how conflict can deepen intimacy, how pain provides information, and why the most beautiful projects often emerge from our greatest struggles. Whether discussing the interpersonal changes behind artist collaboration or the liberation of refusing to choose between being an intellectual and a badass bitch. I truly enjoyed this conversation with Janesta, and I know you all will too. Oh my God. Okay, Janesta, thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Janesta.
Hello.
Oh, I love you. It's so nice to see you.
So nice to see y'all too. I feel like we don't get enough time to see each other anymore.
It's true.
Too true.
We all go way back and we don't get to see each other very often. And man, I am just so excited to spend an hour asking you questions. Feel like such a rare opportunity. So I'm super hyped. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Okay, so you are like failed films royalty, I would say.
Yeah, they are.
I've been around. I feel like I've had a very strong relationship with failed films from I think the beginning. So from season one.
Very beginning back in 2016. Yeah, we were just like trying to come up with not only the films that you made and directed and were produced, but like all the films that you have been in. Like you have like a ton of appearances in other people's films as well. And you have been producer, you have been collaborator, you have been curator.
Mm-hmm.
Like you like when we were in the basement of Paul Kaufman's spot, like you were there like putting up stuff on the walls into the night, like
making cardboard cityscapes.
Yes.
Yes. Spray painting cityscapes on cardboard. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, making flowers out of stuff we found in trash cans.
Oh yeah.
Deep in deep in failed films.
Our hard DIY moments in the early seasons.
Maybe a great place to start would be like, let's go back there to kind of like your history and relationship with failed films. When was the first film you made? And which was the first one? Was it True Colors or was it Blacklight?
It was True Colors. I think I remember getting an email actually like saying, hey, we're doing round 2 and like we'd love for you to submit a film. And I was like, holy, what? Oh my God, me? At that time in 2017, I was, still a sex worker, still very much in the porn industry. And I think when I was like thinking about like what kind of film do I want to make, I think I really I was at a point where I was in the porn industry and it would be like really annoying where I just felt like I was playing a lot of the same roles and there was, being a Black femme performer in the porn industry, there's a lot of projections. There's a lot of ways that you're fetishized that you don't necessarily agree with, and that doesn't necessarily align with your own way that you see yourself as like a fully realized person. And I really just wanted to make like a sapphic porn film with another beautiful Black hot woman and like not have it be any of these weird like caricatures or character types, but just us be like two Black women that desire each other and just want to fuck. Like that's literally all I wanted. And I was so freaking blessed that the person that decided to like be in the film with me was Kira Noir. Shout out to Kira Noir. Yeah. And yeah, I remember like I hit her up and I was like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. This was my first time ever, working from behind the camera, thinking of a concept, thinking of what I wanted to do, directing, being a performer in front of the camera. So this was my first time doing all of it. I was just like, well, we're just gonna see what happens. And we ended up making a really beautiful film. Yeah.
Was that like intimidating or encouraging to be behind the camera for the first time? So obviously like maybe failed films helped encourage you to start it, but like, were you nervous to do it? And did you also feel like, oh yeah, now I have like a place to bring my art to life?
Yeah, I think it was both of those things. In one standpoint, I was like super excited and, I've always been a person where it's like, if I don't like something, I'm just going to like do something to change it. So like for me, I was like, okay, like me as a sexually liberated person that also is in this industry is seeing like a huge gap in the possibility of content that can be created. And like, that's content that I want to see. So like, why not me make the content I want to see? So it was really encouraging, but also of course, at the same time, like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So
yeah.
I was like,
how did that go? Like, I mean, not only were you behind, but you were in front. You're you did both at the same time. Like,
yeah.
Tell me about like the creation, right? Like my vision is like, hopefully there are like first time filmmakers out there who like are listening to this for the first time. And yeah, what was it like?
I mean, it was definitely hectic, but I also have to say that like, I was not by myself. I had people and other friends who are also performers who were like, no, be PA. Like I remember Mona Wales let us shoot at her house. She's like, awesome. And like helped me like, help me set up the set, like man the camera, like, and like really was a great sounding board for like helping me like think about what I wanted to do. Kira Noir was like super chill and was like, yeah, no, I'll fly out. That's totally fine. Like, let's get it done. Like, I think I remember she had like a shoot the next day and literally like flew out to shoot. Like, I was like, I'm gonna take you out to a nice like little like dinner, and then like literally flew back to LA to do like another scene.
Yeah, there's something so special about like the community, this community in particular, and how they like come together for one another to help support these new ventures or that's really cool.
Yeah. And so even though like there was so many things I didn't know and I didn't know what I was doing, it was really great to have other people who were also a part of that community that like believed that I had the ability to do it and were like more than happy to assist me and like create something.
I think that's rare. I don't know. Like I've like talked about this a couple times about just like what was special about the castle or kink.com and like the beautiful side of it. Like there are many sides to that place and
so many sides.
So many stories, and not many of them are sad and hurtful and painful. There was some beauty about just the people that it did bring together and the connections that got made, and just the willingness to teach and to share the skills and experience that everybody had, and everybody was like just very open. And I don't think that that's like a common thing that you find in industries. Like people aren't as willing to be like, oh, you don't know how to light? Let me like, let's get a couple people together and let's go down to the basement and like, let's do a little workshop. you know?
Yeah.
That
And
was
I don't know what I really appreciate. One thing I do really appreciate about, and I'll echo what you said, like so many, it's so many complicated, so many varying stories about the castle and the armory and that place. But like one thing that was really great was, even being a performer, and back then I was flying back and forth to LA, like it's just so different. Like the fact that people just like know you by name, and also the fact that like performers also like know everyone from like the other performers to the director to also like, the people who are doing production. And one thing I always loved too was like, yeah, everyone said hi to each other. It like, yeah, everyone was really chill with each other. People are joking around and like, chilling. And even for me, like I said, I feel like my first entry point in film was through being an adult performer. And it was always so great because, yeah, I'm a curious ass person. So, if I'm seeing a person doing lighting on set, I'm like, oh, what are you doing over there? Like, how does that work? And like, and a person being like, oh, yeah, this, and this. So, like, it was just a very, I don't know, it was really special in a lot of ways. And a lot of people who are forever friends I met through there.
yeah, and forever heartbreaks, right? Like there of course like relationships there that have ended and
Oh God, yeah.
There's so many. Yeah. There's so many. But
forever friendships, forever endings. Yep.
Yeah, so many tragic endings, but also very beautiful continuous relationships that remain strong and really lovely too.
Yeah. So let's move on to the second film you made in Black Light. Lauren, do you want to describe this film? Like this film is one very strikingly visually stunning. Like, yeah, like what are your impressions of that film?
It's essentially like it's Janesta with this beautiful glow in the dark like body paint on, holding like glowing orbs, and it's like this beautiful poem, slow. I don't even know how to describe. It's just it's very like mesmerizing, and like I don't know, something in the drone, that in the music and the things that like repeat over and over, and the way that like your body moves. It's just a mesmerizing piece.
Everybody should have an opportunity to see this film because it's beautiful.
Yes.
Like, yeah, like I guess I knew you were a dancer, but then like I saw that film, I was like, whoa. Like, whoa.
There's also just these really cool still moments though too, right? Just like laid back, like prostrate and whatnot. It's it's hypnotic to say the least. I would say. Yeah.
It's really a great description. I love the contrasting. It's a little like the two films together and putting them side by side feels to me like failed films, right? Like it's like, it is kind of the spectrum of failed films where it's like, look, like I didn't see the porn I wish to see in the world. And so like I got like a hot friend to come over and we
make it.
We fucking fucked and it was fucking hot. It was great. And we made this like weird but like smut, and it was exactly one to see in the world. And to this like art film, right? Like it's
totally
like the whole spectrum there in those two films. That's really beautiful. Will you talk to me a bit about like one, that like progression and your process between the two films, and just a little bit about like what it was like making Black Light in comparison to True Colors?
Yes. Yeah. For Blacklight, I was very intentionally challenging myself. It was wild because I guess like between 2017 and 2018, your girl was going through it clearly. But like, yeah, I think I was definitely like I think I was finding myself in a transition and like somewhat of a crossroads, one with my career as a sex worker, also with my wanting to invest more as an artist, and also with the fact that I wasn't just one type of artist, that I was engaging things like, yes, I come from a dance background and, have a bachelor's in dance, but also as a writer and as a poet. And also, I think I was kind of like going through a place in my life too, because like, I feel like one of the reasons why I kind of left kind of traditional dancing and training in dance and performing as a dancer was because I don't know, there's like aspects in that industry that don't feel good. In the same way that any industry you're in, like there's aspects of the porn industry that I was like, this fucking sucks. And there's aspects in the dance industry and in the art industry where I'm like, this fucking sucks. And so I feel like it was calling me to kind of like question some of those things. And when I was like kind of in my process of questioning and researching, I think I realized like what was performance before we called it performance. And for me, it was ritual. And so I feel like that's when I think for Blacklight, I wanted to challenge myself to one, not put myself in a box artistically and play with all of the different mediums I like to play with. And two, also to play with the idea of ritualizing a performance. And Blacklight came to fruition.
That came to be. Yeah. Yes. And you mentioned before we started recording that you're going to be playing this film or incorporating this film into a new show.
Yeah, so not playing the film, but the poem that I used in the film.
Okay, got it. Cool.
Where I talked about being magic. And, you know, when did you first realize you were magic? I'm going to be reciting that same poem in a live performance format with other dancers dancing to that, and also dancing to another poem that an opera singer made into a score for the entire piece. But she took the lyrics of one of my poems and just allowed herself to be inspired and like created a whole like mind-blowingly beautiful score from my words. That was like my first time ever having someone take my words and like make music out of it. And I was like, holy shit.
No, I think I would tear up. That's crazy. Yeah.
And so, being able to even being that process and like seeing, you know, life be breathed into my words through music, but also having the opportunity to recite that poem live while dancers are like, and like professional ass dancers, like dancing to my poetry. I'm like, who am I? Like, what? But yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Really
so we got like fully promo, like where
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get tickets? Like when can I see this thing?
Yes. It's for Robert Moses Ken. It is showing at ZSpace in San Francisco, California, March 14th to 17th. And I think show times are at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I believe if you follow at Robert Moses Ken, check their link tree and you can get tickets there.
Cool. So let's see. Maybe we can start to talk about failure. So why don't you like talk to me a bit about like how you think about failure in general right now, and maybe how that has changed.
Oh yeah. Currently, to me, I feel that failures are lessons. They're literally lessons that help you become the best version of yourself. And they're information about who you are, your relationship to yourself, and how those relationships reflect outside of you. That's kind of what I see failure as now. In the past, I used to see failure as like a total personal attack on who I am as a human being.
How dare you bring up any failures of mine?
Right. I just, even when I would acknowledge, like, if I messed up in something, I would beat myself up so much. And I think there is a point where I realized that was such a disservice to myself and to other people. And it never really got me anywhere further than where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, through therapy and through journaling, and shout out to my therapist, girl, I love you. For real. But through journaling, through therapy, and also I think actually giving myself the opportunity to pause and reflect really helped me change my relationship to failure. Because at the end of the day, like, failure just makes you a human being just like anyone else.
What would you consider failure? I find that interesting to me. How did that change? Or what is a failure if you're like, oh, this was just a lesson? Do you still call that a failure? Like, what does that mean?
I mean, that brings in a lot of different things too, because I feel like, failure can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. Failure to me can sometimes mean like falling short of a personal expectation I have of myself, which means I fail every fucking day. Every fucking day. Failure can mean, failure sometimes can mean not experiencing a certain outcome that I was sure would be a certain outcome. Failure can mean certain relationships that, painfully ended, where I didn't act my best and the other person didn't act their best. And now we can't fucking talk to each other and can't be in the same room. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Failure, funny enough, Blacklight felt like a failure to me after I first finished it.
Wow. Why?
Because I made a lot of people upset. And like I made a lot of people
How?
with my decision making.
Like in the production of it? How like tell me about that conflict. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's really funny because I think even though that film was like my second film, it was only my second film. And even to this day, like I'm still such a novice, like with filmmaking, you know what I mean? So like there still was so much more I was learning around managing a project, collaborating with other people within the project, having clear boundaries and lines of communication, managing expectations.
Oh Lord! Oh wow! Yeah, I've been there. I know it. I get it. Yeah.
So and so like when you have all of that, also when you're working on a project that's creative, you're working with other artists and other creatives, and like, let's be real, artists are so very precious. And I say this as an artist. I know I am sensitive as fuck. I am sensitive about my shit. We are. All of us are.
We are.
All of us are. And so when you have like all these like multiple strong personalities, brilliant personalities, but strong personalities, how do you manage that? How do you also keep your vision in mind and have boundaries around what you're okay with shifting and not shifting? You're also working on a very linear timeline where you have to get things, there's just a lot you're dealing with. And so was super ambitious about what I wanted to do, my vision, how it was going to work and all of that. And I was also mad flawed because I'm a human and also an artist and also a person that's like delving into a medium that like they're still actively learning. So of course.
Of course. Yes.
I
can relate.
People are going to be upset with you, mad at you, be like, why did you do this? Why did you get this version? I wanted you. So it was funny. Like when like the making of Blacklight, like I think I had broken up with a partner around that time. Like, one of the collaborators that I was working with on it was pissed at me. We've since then like have reconciled. She's one of my besties. Love her down. Like, locked in, A1, love you. But yeah, we had like there was conflict. There was conflict that arose out of me creating this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
But it doesn't feel like a failure today, I guess.
No, it doesn't. And
yeah.
time gives you a lot of perspective.
Gosh, yeah. Now having this like poem being read and danced by dancers with an opera of your words and the things like, oh my gosh, who even knows like when you start to create a project that you, I guess maybe have this chaotic creative control that you don't know and you're making people mad, but like watch where it like leads. Like, you know, that's incredible.
And I think like that's like one thing. I think if there is any artists or like, you know, people who want to be artists that are listening to this podcast, like process versus project is very different. And even if there is struggle within delivering a certain project that may make you feel a certain way, that doesn't mean you have to abandon that project. That project can still have so much life left in it. And so like, take the things you learned from the process where you were like, okay, that worked, didn't like that. And like, keep working on it, you know? Who's to say when a project is truly done?
Yeah, you just described failed films to a T.
Yeah.
Like every time we do it, every year, it's like, oh my God, like, wow.
How many failures are in the process of failed films?
So many. You have no idea. You have so many. It's like,
I've been there for some. I've been there.
We're sorry. Yeah. And I'm proud. Yeah. And amends. Like I'm sure there's ownership to take. I mean, but that is the piece. Like I waffle between these two like sides of the failure coin, which is like exactly what you said at the beginning, where it's like, yeah, it is information. Right. Like it's the very scientific view of like the scientific method. Like you have to experiment, you have to fail to learn, to understand things about yourself. But then there's like the other side of the pain.
Oh, God.
And that fucking hurts.
Fucking hurts.
Like the failing, like whether, like especially, you know, there's lots of opportunities to fail in interpersonally with making films because most of the time you gotta get a crew. And making failed films, you gotta get a crew mainly of people that are your friends. And like, failed there, like, how do you think about the pain side of that equation?
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying I very much am a sadomasochist. So my relationship to pain may be different than other people's relationship to pain, but just saying. So we have a starting point here. But also, like, pain is information too. Like, and, you know, it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it does feel good, not gonna lie. But like, also like, but for real.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
We're all friends here.
We all get that, yeah.
And so, you know, but also pain very much is information too. I think also there is very much a difference between like physical pain and emotional pain. Like emotional pain, like, it sucks. And I don't know if there's a consensual way of you know, having pain happen, but also pain too is information around your relationship with yourself and your relationship to other people. When you have a moment to fully go through all the stages that, you know, a certain painful moment or event or something can bring you, it actually does provide information on your relationship to yourself, your relationship to other people, and different ways of being. I think what can be really hard when it comes to pain and when it comes to harm is we are a society of people that have been indoctrinated by carceral thinking. And so we replicate that carceral thinking in the way that we approach each other. And so it's like, oh, you hurt my feelings. You don't deserve anything. I hate you. You know what I mean? We're very quick to throw relationships away because of uncomfortable things like conflict, because an expectation wasn't met. And it's easier to be like, well, you're a bad person and you hurt me, than to say something like, you set up this expectation and that expectation wasn't met and that hurt my feelings. So I think, yeah, our relationship to pain is also like pivotal in our journey in becoming better versions of ourselves, more authentic versions of ourselves, less apologetic versions of ourselves. Yeah, it's information that can help us get there. But a lot of times the journey is not easy because you're needing to confront probably some problematic things about yourself. It's really easy to call another person an asshole, but also, you know,
Yeah,
how are you an asshole?
Yeah, I could definitely be an asshole for sure.
I am. Yeah. No, I feel like my personal journey has been a little bit of like, you just have to accept maybe that you're a little bit of an asshole and just try not to be that much of an asshole. Just like, you have to accept that side of yourself a bit.
Yeah, no.
Lauren, I cut you off, please. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, on the same sort of line of thinking, something kind of popped into my brain that I saw, like, sure it was like on Instagram or something about this, like, it wasn't necessarily about like the carceral energy that we bring to things, but a lot about the sort of cancel culture that we live in and this sort of like very individualistic society that we live in, that it's like, oh, you're harming me and I must cut off like everything to do with you because like I deserve to, as an individual, to, I don't know, make my life as good as possible. And in some ways, I mean, yeah, I think that that's true, but like that loses so much of like the community efforts of like forgiveness and like, yeah, everything that you were like speaking to of like learning about ourselves and others in the ways that we can reconcile, you know, like it's one thing to like cut off an abuser, of course, you know, or something like that, you know, but like in cancel culture and individualistic culture, like I think we are too quick to do that to people. So
oh no, yeah, and that's the funny thing, because like I'm very critical of cancel culture because I think there are aspects. I'm all about accountability. I think we all should be accountable, but there is a difference between accountability and needing to see someone suffer and make them suffer until you feel it's enough. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And we are social beings, right? There was a time in my life where I was disowned from my blood family, and like that, the pain of that separation was way more than I like anticipated it would be when I was like originally like, I'm fine, like I don't need to talk to them. It's the same with like chosen family too. Being completely pushed out of community and isolation is so painful. That is a piece of harm. And I think the piece that you're kind of getting at, that like conflict doesn't always mean harm. And I think those things sometimes get conflated. Like we are in conflict and we are fighting, and that means you are harming me. And that means I'm like re-traumatized. And I'm like, they're just in community, in friendship, like in chosen family, like there needs to be that room for conflict and hurting each other. Like we're gonna do it. And can we figure out how to come back together?
Yeah. And it's almost like inevitably in close relationships, you will run into that no matter what. Like not like you're purposefully like hurting your your chosen family or your friends or anything, but it's like not everyone's always going to agree, or never. Some people might have separate expectations, or like it's inevitable. Especially you kind of want, it's not like you want it, but it's like, it really proves that you're closer than that, right? Like then you can work through that you are participating in or showing up in such a way that you like mean something to me enough to argue.
I feel like I don't think you can be I don't think you can really experience true intimacy without some kind of conflict. Like, like, yeah.
Cool. I'm going to pivot the conversation just a tad here, and the other, but still on the failure theme, and that is in addition to probably the most painful failures I've experienced have been interpersonal, like failing a relationship. The other one, and this kind of gets that, like, we live in a capitalist society, and so like we are judged upon what we produce and how good we are at our jobs, and like all that stuff. Like, and so the other really painful failures I've felt have been career wise. And you are someone who has done an extremely hard thing, which is completely change careers. And you've like, like went from very adult industry and then transitioned into other things. Like, one, was there failure there? And two, like, what was that experience like of like completely changing your career life?
I mean, I feel like I don't know. I'm quiet because I'm debating as to whether I experienced failure, if the word is failure necessarily with my transition out of the industry. I feel like the transition itself was never a failure because it was something that I knew I needed to do. Just because, for me personally and where I was at, I felt like I wasn't benefiting in the way that I wanted to from being, in the adult industry. And so I needed to pivot, because I think one of the biggest boundaries and promises that I made to myself when I first started doing sex work and being in the industry was, okay, when this stops feeling good and when this stops feeling fun, we're going to get out. And so when it stopped feeling good and when it stopped feeling fun, I got out. And yeah, to be honest with you, that transition was not easy. It was really rough. It was really rough. Because I mean, I think one thing people don't always understand, and I think one of the things that can be one of the most difficult obstacles in transitioning out is, like, you're used to having access to a certain amount of income for sure. And I feel like, and like, mind you, I was definitely, I was in the industry in the early 2000s. I think things are probably drastically different now, but I think that was probably one of the biggest obstacles with me was, financially preparing for that shift and figuring out, kind of like refiguring out a new relationship with money that wasn't scarcity based, but just understanding that it's just going to be very different. 'Cause, I feel like, and I think a lot of different sex workers will probably feel this a lot differently, but like a lot of the money you make goes back into like self-care and like making sure you feel good, just because like there are so many aspects of sex work, and I don't think this gets talked about enough, that is very energetically taxing and emotionally taxing. And not to say that it's a bad thing. I feel that like the relationship I have with humanity is the way it is because I did sex work for 7 or so years. It opens you up for a very deeper understanding to humanity and why it is the way it is, but it is very emotionally taxing. It is physically taxing. It can be very spiritually taxing. And so like so much goes into like refilling that cup so that like you can be functional, so that you can like maintain your relationships that you have, so you can like do all of that. So I think like, yeah, I think I wouldn't say it was a failure. I think there was a time where I did feel like I failed. Like it was a weird, like, I'm a bad sex worker because I can't do this anymore. But, like, you know what I mean? Just because there's like, because sex work as an industry is already like, is so stigmatized. There's a certain relationship you have to it where it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, there's a certain way that you identify. And so I think for me, I think there was an interesting like unbraiding I had to do with like what failure was, and me transitioning out of an industry that at once brought me a lot of joy, but then no longer brought me joy. And then also needing to like reconcile and like, you know, figure out through trial and error a couple times like what my next moves were. Cause I think like straight out of sex work, I was an esthetician. Like it was cool, it was all right, but I kind of hated it at the same time. And
I
then
mean, like that. I feel like that's. I mean, in no way was I trying to say that leaving the industry was a failure. I just want.
oh no.
I don't. I
That
don't
was
see your
totally,
career in the adult industry as a failure.
that was 100% me issue that I
Okay.
had to work out with myself. That was me and my own demons. Like, no, like, yeah, that was 100% me and my own demons, and me needing to, like, I think, I don't know, like when you are a sex worker, there is an aspect where it can be an identity
Yes.
because it's so heavily stigmatized.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that as a judgment. I don't think it's good, bad, or anything. I think it's a neutral. It's a neutral. I think it's also a way to cope in being in an industry that can be volatile, not because of the people who are in it, but because of the way the world perceives it. And so it's very complex. And so I think for me, I was having to like be like, well, is this really failure? Or is this really a success because like you actually are recognizing what's good for you? And instead of staying in the comfort because you've been doing this and knowing that it's not good for you, you're going to pivot instead. And even though that transition is going to be rough, you have to trust yourself to know that like this is what's good for me and myself.
Because if you don't, right? Like I think the consequences of not listening to yourself in that would probably result in trauma, right? Because you're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And you're like, I'm doing it anyway. Then like that is not good for your heart and head and soul.
All of it.
So man, like, thank you for sharing like that perspective on just like having to grapple with the way you saw exiting the industry. Like, sounds so hard. Like,
it was, there was grief. There was heavy grief around me being out of the industry, like a lot, you know, and not just grief of not doing something anymore, but also grief in like, you know, my relationships, you know, some of my relationships with other people who are also in that industry had to change and morph in a way. And so also grieving that, and like, you know, there's so many aspects of it that you grieve. And it's like, oh, I'm not this anymore. Cause like, you know, sex work is multifaceted, but also like it gave me, it also provided me a type of armor and gave me access to a part of myself that at first I didn't feel safe having access to. Like I still to this day don't see myself like, I got to be the badass bitch that I always wanted to be. And like to this day, like y'all have known me for a long time. I am like very nerdy, very booky, like
Yes.
super silly.
We love all the sides of you.
Serious badass bitch. Like, if you're gonna ask me about Janesta,
Never stopped.
But it
badass
also
bitch.
like it gave me permission to like access that and be like, you know, and you know, perform femininity in this way that like felt so validating for me. And I think when I was transitioning out of sex work, I think there was a part of me that still felt like I had to choose one or the other. You either got to be Janesta, like, you know, super smart, super intellectual, artsy, da 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 da, or like you can be like, you know, you can be hoe, like bad bitch, like femme fatale. And like for me, like there's a part of me that felt like I could not be both. Now I'm just kind of like, fuck it, like what you see is what you see. I'm all of it. And
I mean, I think that's probably an amazing place to stop. Like, yeah. Like through it all, through all the experiences, through everything, like, yeah, where do we end up is just like a fuller acceptance of all those aspects in the mosaic that is Janesta. And I love that so much.
Yeah,
I love it. I love you.
Yeah, love you so much.